would be an impact. Okay? So it doesn't have to be germane to transportation at all. But your link does. But I'll get more into the impact debate, I think, in a little bit. Yes?
I know you probably get to, I know definitely probably get to later, but like,
sure.
More or less, it like, seems like we have to pick a battleground. There's like no in between what we can decide. Like, we take a neutral stance towards it, so like, we could garner advantage of the whole president. Like, is that possible?
Well, not on one particular side, right? So, give me the example of what you're talking about.
More or less, like, you say like, start. Like,
okay.
We could take a neutral stance towards that.
How would that? Are you talking about the affirmative or negative?
For like both. I mean, like if you're a debate on and like you have to choose between Obama or Romney or whatever, why can't you take like a neutral stance between that?
What benefit does that get you?
I mean, more or less it just deflects, you know.
I'm sorry, maybe I need you to define what neutral stance means. Does it mean that Obama and Romney have the same stance?
No, I mean like to find a middle ground, we don't have to decide either side.
I think the problem
I don't know.
is if your plan, even if you say like, oh, it's neutral, it's not going to affect anything, your plan, their argument is your plan is still going to make that change.
But
are you talking about how the plan affects the election,
yeah.
or whether or not the impact is neutral? Maybe I'm just confused by your question.
The impact would still, yeah, like the impact would be neutral because the plan would be neutral.
The only way the impact would be neutral is if Obama and Romney have the same stance on the same issue.
Yeah, exactly, that's what I'm trying to say.
So then that's not an impact, right? So if somebody says, makes an argument that an Obama presidency means he's going to bomb Iran, and then you read a piece of evidence in the 2AC to answer that says that, well, Romney's going to bomb Iran. They have the same stance, right? So the impact is inevitable because it doesn't matter whether or not Romney or Obama will win the election, right? So it's going to happen either way, and if that's what you mean by neutral, then yes, that's a fine argument to make.
So won't you be able to garner both Obama and Romney?
No, it's inevitable either way. No matter what the plan does, right? If Obama wins, irrelevant what the plan does, he'll bomb Iran, and I'm assuming bombing Iran's a good thing. Or B, if the plan helps Romney win, he's going to bomb Iran. So at the end of the day, no matter who wins, Iran's going to get bombed, right?
What if it's like, can you argue that your plan won't even affect the outcome of the election?
Yes, that's how you would debate the link debate, and I'll get to that a little bit more in a little bit.
So maybe I don't understand.
Sure.
You said there are two options, Obama good, Romney bad, or Obama bad, Romney good.
Yes.
In the first option, Obama good, Romney bad, are there a few assumptions you make that Obama will win now, plan will hurt Obama, and Obama's good, Romney's bad? Are those assumptions, or what are those?
They'll be bad based upon evidence. That's just a loose outline of what the disadvantage will encompass.
Why plan will hurt Obama?
I'll get to that in a moment as well. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So, as I said, got kind of a sidetrack here, but I need to debate the how. How do we determine who's going to win the election? There are several ways. I've listed several different types here, and really some examples of how the uniqueness is determined. A good uniqueness debate will encompass all of this, right? So kind of at the highest levels of the collegiate debate, people will be debating whether or not polls or models are better, whether or not Model X is better than Model Y, how a specific poll only impacts swing voters, or how a specific model is flawed, or how a specific poll was only a small sample set and that poll was bad, right? So that really gets into the specific nuances, the specifics of those metrics or indicators, right? So the best debaters at the highest collegiate level can get into that. But what I want to do is talk a little bit about each one of these and give you some examples. This will give you a good, in terms of researching, some keywords that you may want to look up. And at the end, I'll also show you some additional sites you can go to. It's an easy kind of Google News search, but I'll get into that a little bit more later. So polls. Polls is easy, right? The Gallup poll, you probably all heard of, comes out fairly often. The Rasmussen poll, there's a Pew poll, there's an AP poll, right? So these are all, these come out fairly often. I can't speak to the specific frequency of those, but if you do any search for any of these polls in Obama in this month, you'll be able to find what the most recent polls are saying with regard to the election, in terms of who's going to win, whether or not Obama or Romney. Models. Models is a little bit more complicated, right? Because, quite honestly, they don't care about the polls. The models are usually based upon historical trends and the second part of this as well, both and tied to really indicators. So while a specific poll may say that maybe that Romney is winning, a specific model predicts, because based upon a certain number of variables, who will in all likelihood win the election. So for the most part, most people will claim that models are much better because they're not based upon a small sample set, they're based upon more longitudinal studies of elections and variables within that election. So something like the economy, right? Something like the stock market, something like employment rates, right? So most models will try to incorporate a handful of different variables in order to predict who's going to win the election. Does that make sense to everyone? Which is usually a lot better than a poll. And a poll will just, I could ask everyone in this room who they want to vote for, and then publish it and say, well, here's my poll. Here's the number of people that say that they think that Obama's going to win or Romney's going to win. So there are inherent limitations to polls, and you can end up debating which poll is better. But at the end of the day, I would say a poll is probably your least effective method to win uniqueness. It's probably a good first line in terms of your 1NC, but you want to base your uniqueness on more models and indicators and so on. Models. So a couple of them that I'm noting here. The Lichtman's keys. Professor Lichtman actually wrote a book a couple of years ago, right? And so I believe the number is he's predicted, he actually went back and analyzed every election based upon there's a handful of keys that he's mentioned, whether or not it's the economy, whether or not there's been a major war, whether or not there's been a terrorist attack, whatever. And he has come up with a specific way to evaluate an election based upon these keys, and then thus being able to predict the outcome. Right? So when he did an analysis of this, looked at all the keys, he has predicted every election correct, even retroactively speaking, based upon the variables for that specific election. And in fact, for this election, he's already predicted that Obama is going to win. So other models, there's a new kind of a computerized model from Yahoo. I believe it's called the Signal model. That's also been predicting that Obama is going to win. And then there's a couple others like the Moody's Analytics. You can easily research a number of these. There are inherent limitations to the models as well. The one thing that most people don't realize that models is based upon a number of different variables, right? One of which could be the plan. But the other variables are also other reasons why something else could affect the election, which isn't necessarily the plan. So that meaning that other things could affect how the outcome of the election, not just the plan itself. So as affirmative, it's a good way to delve deep into those models, to talk a little bit about what those models are based upon, what the variables there are, and to make ground in terms of the link debate to say why other things could affect the election. Right? I mean, no likelihood, really. If Obama came out and proposed a large increase in funding for transportation infrastructure, how would that be perceived? Depends who you ask, right? So in the specific models where they list a lot of other things that could have greater impact on the election, the plan in itself could be something that's very small, right? So a smart debater will be able to delve into the specific models and speak to each one of those specific keys. So something like Lichtman's keys, you get to each one of the keys, right? You attack each one and say, well, Lichtman said that Obama will win. Your link evidence says that the public doesn't like the plan, right? So, but there's all these other things. There's like 12 different keys here that will not change, right? So Lichtman says that if I think it's 5 or 7 of the keys go in one direction, then that person will win. Meaning that if you only affect one of those and he still has the same amount of keys, more likely he's going to win. Indicators. Indicators is one of the other key components of models. How the stock market is doing. I think it's obvious. That's more of an economic key, right? The unemployment rate is another one, right? A lot of people say if the unemployment rate goes below 10 or something like that, Obama will easily get reelected, but if it hovers above 10, that he's more than likely going to be in trouble. Public popularity, right? Obama's approval rating. If it's above a certain mark, that he's more likely going to get reelected. I think a lot of people say that historically looking at these trends, if presidents, I believe approval rating is below 50%, then he might be in trouble. So those are all different examples of different indicators that you could possibly be debating. One other key area of this is really the swing in battleground states. As you know, the way the election works is more on a electoral college, right? If you win the big states, you get more electoral votes, you become president, right? So there are key states that could sway the election one way or the other. Florida's a big one, right? So you probably remember, hopefully, Bush and Gore, or you might not be old enough, but that was primarily swayed by one state and the Supreme Court, but whatever. But really, there's one state that, if swayed one way or the other, would have swayed the entire election, right? So key states, key battleground states that you could possibly debate are Ohio, Florida, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Michigan, and North Carolina. Like, those are the ones that right now people are saying that, well, these are the key battleground states in which if Obama or Romney can win these states, that will help put them over the hump and be able to get the amount of electoral votes they need to become president. And so what I could also imagine is a negative really just concentrating on one state. Right? They could say, Obama's going to win now. He's winning in Florida. The plan really is disliked by Florida voters. He loses Florida, so he loses the election. So the negative then has just shrunk down the debate to, maybe your regular polls aren't relevant to kind of our disadvantage, the Florida scenario, right? The specific battleground states. And so all these could be different linked stories, right? And so when I talked before about different narratives for the link, right, this could possibly be one. So they could claim that the plan impacts Florida voters. They could claim that it impacts Virginia voters, North Carolina, so on and so forth. Okay? It makes it easier for the negative, right? They can focus then on a specific state. Okay. Swing voters. Same thing, just by grouping specific voters. How does the plan affect women voters? Not necessarily it would. African Americans, religious groups, independents, the Latino vote, the Asian vote, whatever. There could be specific linked stories discussed there. Not entirely sure at this point whether or not it would be specific to the transportation infrastructure, the spending. But for the most part, a lot of people will say that if Obama wins the Latino vote, then he'll be able to run away with the election, right? Fundraising. Fundraising is a kind of an obvious one, right? Whoever has the most money will probably win. And so this one is actually very important this year. The reason being that this past year there was a Supreme Court decision called Citizens United that allowed basically corporations to give to candidates. Right? It's the first time that they've been able to do it. It's caused what's been called the creation of super PACs, right? The political action committees or lobby groups that can now give tens of millions of dollars to whatever candidate they want, whereas they couldn't do so before. So these super PACs really give the ability for candidates to be able to spend as much money as they can in a battleground state to specific swing voters to help sway their votes. So whoever has the most money is usually a good indicator of who could win, right? So one example of this is there's been recent communications on the Obama side about how they are actually going to get outspent for the first time in history based upon specific fundraising deadlines that they've had. That Romney is bringing in billions of dollars, whereas the majority of Obama's funding comes from people that give less than $1,000. The majority of Romney's funding comes from the majority of people that give more than $1,000. There's even a lot of different candidates a lot of different supporters that have given millions. Right? So some of the supporters that were supporting other people on the GOP side, they were giving tens of millions of dollars to Newt Gingrich or something like that. They're now giving that money to Romney. So fundraising becomes an interesting debate about who will win. It's one of those key variables for determining really who's going to win the election. Lobby groups. Lobby groups are a fact of life, right? Lobby groups, there's a ton of them. And they have varying levels of power within Washington, right? But at the end of the day, it comes down to the same question. Who has the most sway? Who has the most money? What interest groups are they tied to? So something like AIPAC, which is a Jewish Political Action Committee. right? Their interest primarily lies in how the what the U.S. policy is towards Israel, right? So something like the Latino lobby, the AFL-CIO, which are specific groups or unions that can help determine whether or not Obama wins in some place that's more important in terms of manufacturing, like Michigan, right? So these are all different groups that, based upon their relative power, how much money they have, their ability to spend, their ability, what power they have in those specific swing states, could all swing the election as well. And I've already talked about kind of this super PAC support tied to fundraising. Two of the key super PACs are Priorities USA, which is for Obama, and Restore Our Future, which is for Romney. They're collecting, fundraising tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions for their particular candidates. Okay. Any questions about the uniqueness? As I said, really, at any given day, you can do a Google search, find out who you think is going to win, and that will really help the direction of your disadvantage.
So it's possible that one type of uniqueness will say that Romney's going to win, and another one will say that Obama's going to win. So you have to argue that why your source is better than the other.
Correct. Absolutely. Yes.
You mentioned the super PACs up there.
Yeah.
I guess part of the, what would be the debate is how much impact the 529 groups are going to have. I think it's going to be so much more than in the past, because that's where all the money is going in.
Yeah.
And it's, all circumventing the previous regulations about how much an individual could give candidates. How much can people use that in debates?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they can, and that really ties back to kind of the fundraising aspect, right? So if one super PAC is larger than the other, and your argument is that fundraising is key to the election, that's your argument as to why Romney will win, or probably more likely that Romney will win. I think it's probably the direction of the super PAC argument. But you have to win the assumption of that, which is fundraising is key to the election. Which is kind of a fact of life, I think, to a certain extent. Any other questions? So, as I said, really, the question down here is, why are models better than polls? Right? They're predictive. Right? They don't change based upon the ebb and flow of people's opinions or the current events or something like that. Models are based upon really more historical trends. Right? So a lot of times people, if you're on the negative trying to win that Obama's going to win, it seems to me right now most of the models are saying that Obama's going to win. So if you're on the negative and your arguments that Obama's going to win, you may want to base your first argument on models, so that when the affirmative answers and reads a bunch of polls, you can say, well, our model is better than your poll, right? So you're articulating why your evidence is much better than theirs on that side. Okay. The link debate, the why. And so this part is really I think the critical piece of this debate, really germane to the topic in itself. If you don't have a good link, you're not going to win. If you can't articulate what your link is, you're not going to win. And for the most part, if you only have one, unless the other team doesn't argue and answer it, then you're probably not going to win either. This is where I think that, as I really, as I said, the election disad could be an entire debate. It could be the entire 2AC if you really wanted it to be. Depending upon how the 2AC answers it, you could make several arguments, make different any number of different flavors of link arguments, and read any different number of different impacts, right? So let's talk a little bit about the link debate, the why. So I kind of put these in two different columns. First is for the Obama good, Romney bad, and then for the Obama bad, Romney good debate. Okay, I want to make sure you guys are still understanding that distinction here. So the Obama good link debate, remember this is based upon, I believe it was option 2, which was Obama's going to win now, the plan hurts Obama, which is this link debate, right? And that Obama's good. Does that make sense to everyone? Sure, I'm not losing anything. Okay. So the assumption of the B subpoint in that argument is that the plan hurts Obama. Okay? Very simple. Just remember that. The plan, whatever it does, whether or not it spends money on mass transit, whether or not it does P3 funding, whether or not it builds super trains, airports, airplanes, whatever, right? whatever the specific link is, your argument on the negative is that that probably will hurt Obama in terms of his constituents or those that would vote for him or not vote for him. So the first one here is kind of the obvious one. Funding transportation is unpopular. Plan hurts Obama. He passes a plan that says, I'm going to fund transportation. Majority of the public doesn't like it, right? Less people now will come out to vote for him. His approval rating goes down. His base doesn't become mobilized. Any number of reasons, right? Doing unpopular policies makes it more likely that Obama will not get reelected. Simple, right? Okay. And this is where it kind of gets into more of the different flavors and nuances of the link debate. Infrastructure spending is seen as wasteful, and it spurs a fiscal backlash. So, on the negative, the claim is basically that even though we might need infrastructure, we might need mass transit, we might need our roads fixed, or whatever, even though a lot of people see that as something that's beneficial, a lot of people also think that their money, either A, that the government needs to spend their money on other things, right, or B, they just see it as more wasteful and something that the state should do, the federal government should not deal with any of that, and that really causes more of a political backlash, right? They don't want to spend money. They don't want to see any more spending, right? The big hit against Obama right now is that, look, you have increased the debt because you just spend and spend and spend and spend, right? So what would be the public reaction then if he now proposed a, $1 billion initiative to fund transportation? Right? The public would backlash even more because he will not be able to overcome the perception that he is just a wasteful spender. Okay? The second part of this is that, and you could articulate this as really a consequence of the plan, but the plan, as a result of increasing spending, Obama will actually have to increase taxes in order to fund it. Right? So, one way or the other, either he's going to deficit spend, meaning that this is going to be spun by Romney as, look, he's leveraging our children's future, he's putting us more into debt, right? It's a good narrative to attack Obama with. Or, if Obama wants to avoid that, he's going to have to increase taxes. And increasing taxes is never popular. And so his support would further plunge that way. The plan could be spun also as anti-environment, which hurts Obama's base support. Depending upon the specific plan of what it does, as I said, if they want to build a new airport someplace, they want to build more roads or whatever that perhaps cuts through specific wilderness areas or something like that. That transportation in itself is something that is inherently more wasteful in terms of the environment because it just encourages more driving. Right? There's a lot of different ways in which a lot of people view funding of transportation. Well, if it's not tied to greater controls on environmental controls, would be seen as anti-environment. Does that make sense to everyone? And that inevitably would hit against his base support and swing voters in which the environment is very important to them. One of the arguments that could be made as well is that the perceived spending outweighs the economic gains. So a good affirmative in this scenario will claim that, well, spending on infrastructure actually saves us a lot of money, it creates new jobs, it does this and this, right? It's actually a good thing. And that's how the affirmative will answer. The answer to that is that the perception of the spending is a bad idea. Right, so a good example of this is the bailouts, right? Bailing out of GM, right? Everyone's like, we should not have spent money to bail out GM, right? Because it's wasteful spending. Kind of the impact of that is that GM is still alive now. They have a lot of different, the economic gains of that bailout was actually a good thing, right? But everyone doesn't gravitate to the end consequence of that spending, but they look primarily at the fact that billions of dollars need to be spent to bail out a company, right? So that's just an example here of how a perceived spending would outweigh the economic gain. So it's a perception, right? How do people perceive the plan? Now, the link debate is always about spin, right? How is the plan going to be spun? So in this in this scenario, the arguments are basically going to be spun in such a way that they will be harmful to Obama. And the other argument is just and this really ties everything together, really, that fiscal discipline is critical to any number of different constituents, whether or not it is to the GOP, right? So like the Tea Party vote, independents and swing voters, right? That all believe that this election is about the economy, right? If that's true, and Obama proposes doing the plan and it costs billions of dollars, they may not see that as a good thing right now. So, obviously it could impact the way they would vote. Whether or not it's something that's important to the overall Democratic base, whether or not it's important to the specific swing states we talked about. So some places like Ohio, Florida, Virginia, Pennsylvania. I know that in some of the other elections it says that I've seen there's specific links to those specific states, also tied to some of the specific affirmatives that you may be debating. So it's definitely important to look at how a policy or a specific plan impacts those states. And there's also specific links, as I said, really to different highways, P3 funding. Those are always your best links, right? Because it helps really isolate a cause that's tied to the plan and is not more generic. So specific link is always much better than a more general link. And so yeah, there are definitely areas in which you could probably research some more, depending on what the plan does. Okay, so the other direction. Obama bad, Romney good. Starting at the top, basically, as we said before, in this scenario, it is a Romney good scenario. Romney's going to win now. The plan helps Obama, meaning that the plan is popular, and Obama is bad. He'll either do something bad, or Romney is good for whatever reason. But the key component of this is the B subpoint, right? That the plan helps Obama. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. Plan helps Obama. There could be any number of different arguments made here. Budding transportation is popular. Exact opposite of the other side. Lots of arguments being made there about transportation that could be spun as a job creation type of issue. And as I said, really number 2 here, the infrastructure is key to jobs. Jobs are key to the election, the unemployment rate, right? Those are all the key indicators that we talked about. If the plan really can affect those things, then more than likely it'll help Obama. Infrastructure gives Obama a good economic message, really tied to something like tied to unemployment, tied to jobs, right? People are more concerned about the economy. So it really answers some of the perception arguments that I think we made on the other side. And then there are specific states. Transportation investments key to Florida. Florida's key to the election. Right? There could be specific projects that are more important to swing states. And if that's the case, then those swing states could end up going in the direction of Obama and helping him win the election. The AFL-CIO loves infrastructure spending, which is key to labor union and business support. Right? So something like the manufacturing sector, something like automobiles, right? That all love infrastructure support because they tend to sell more cars or other different types of transportation. Right? So this particular lobby group, for labor unions and so on and so forth, tied to manufacturing, tied to different industries, will all like the plan and thereby give more support to Obama. As I said before, manufacturing loves infrastructure, which is key to Ohio, which is a key swing state, very similar to the Florida argument above. And there's other specific links here that airports could be popular, highways, HSR, National Infrastructure Bank, mass transit. These are all areas in which you will want to have specific links in the event that you decide to run this link in this direction. Any questions about the link debate? The impact debate. This is what I call the what. Okay, so we've talked about the uniqueness, we've talked about the link, now we talk about the impact. Right? So again, 2 different options. Option 1 is in this kind of chart is Obama good, Romney bad, and on the other side, option 2 is an Obama bad, Romney good scenario. So really, what arguments can be made? As I said, this could be as easy as going to the candidates' websites, looking at the specific issue stances that they have, and really extracting impacts and reading terminal impacts to those. But we do have, I know that a lot of the work that I did in the previous year, I believe that you guys are getting, really becomes the basis for how big those debates can get and different impacts that you can obviously weigh against the affirmative. Right? So at the end of the day, when you run the elections decide, you want to obviously be able to say that your disad impact outweighs the affirmative. Right? So depending on what those impacts are, depending on what the affirmative claims in the 1AC and what advantages they have, may really help you determine what impacts that you should be reading. So in the Obama good scenario, we've isolated a couple here. Obviously, this is not an exhaustive list, but really just a good start of the arguments that you could be making for this particular option. And keep in mind too that you could hear every one of these in the debate. Right? Imagine how big that debate gets. If you need to debate global warming, if you need to debate the economy, you need to debate Iran strikes, you need to debate space militarization, Keystone XL pipeline, which I misspelled, U.S.-China relations, NATO expansion, U.S.-Russia relations, and North Korea. That's a big debate. Right? So as I said, really, one of the weaknesses in this is that it could get too big for you. Because you will have to have at least some working knowledge, at least some evidence to be able to answer each one of these impacts. Because you could get surprised at any point in time that somebody reads an impact that you might not have an answer to. Right? So that puts you at a unique disadvantage. So that's one weakness that I think that could pop up. But I think with preparations, it's one of those things that is a calculated risk that ends up working to your advantage, usually on the negative. Because at the end of the day, you have the negative block. You have much more time to answer or extend the dissent than you do. So let me get to the specifics of the impact debate. The Obama good, Romney bad. Obama wants to have EPA CO2 regulations, right? Critical to global warming. U.S. key to modeling, whatever, which is critical to global warming. Global warming causes extinction, right? The other one is Iran strikes. This one is actually a pretty unique scenario in that it does not make a claim about who wins or loses the election. Does everybody know what October surprise is?
It's the idea that if you start like some kind of war, you'll be seen as more of a hero because presidents during wars are
right. So it's kind of like there's a movie about a wag the dog or whatever it was. So October surprise. The story behind this story. This is where, as I said, you can have different flavors of election disads. This is one of them, and this is one I think actually could end up being one of the ones that is. Has a lot of utility because it doesn't answer the question of who wins or loses the debate. It answers the question of how Obama reacts to the public perception as a result of the plan. Right. So let me talk a little bit about that. In this, if I was to read an October surprise disadvantage, the A subpoint would be that Obama's going to win now. B subpoint is the plan hurts Obama. The C subpoint is if Obama thinks he's going to lose the election, he's going to bomb Iran, right? Bombing Iran is bad. It causes Middle East war, whatever, destroys the economy, so on and so forth, right? Did I make a claim about who wins the election? Nope, not at all, right? So as I said, it's a different kind of flavor of an election dissad, and that it doesn't really matter what the outcome of the election is. So if the affirmative comes back and says, well, Romney's good, you should be like, we don't make a claim about who wins or loses the election. Right? Just that the perception that Obama is going to lose the election means he's going to bomb Iran, which is bad. Right? So that may be an easy way to run an elections dissad. And something you need to keep an eye out for when you're answering elections. You want to make sure it's not an October surprise scenario because you've got to answer that in a very different way. Okay? On the other side of this, one of the other arguments that can be made is that just Romney is, if he becomes president, that he's going to try to strong-arm Iran, and that he's inevitably going to, stock his cabinet and with neocons, neoconservatives that want to basically start wars, right? And that they're going to cause, they're actually going to strike Iran anyway. This is actually, can you see how then, if Romney becomes president, how that answers the October surprise scenario? It's a complicated question. Right, this comes back to your answer, right? If Obama thinks he's going to lose, he's going to bomb Iran, right? If your answer to that is, well, Romney's going to bomb Iran anyway, right? An answer, it means that the impact is inevitable. It doesn't matter who's president. That Obama's going to bomb him if he thinks he's going to lose, whatever. If Romney wins, he's going to bomb them anyway, right? The impact is inevitable, irrelevant to how the plan affects the election. Whether or not Obama thinks he's going to win or lose, whether or not swing votes are affected, whether or not Obama or Romney wins Florida, Ohio, Michigan, Hawaii, whatever. Doesn't matter. Whoever is president will bomb Iran. The impact is inevitable. Does everyone understand that? Doesn't matter who wins. It's going to happen either way. Both presidents